I interviewed Lacey Lynn and Dancing Dove about the deleterious nature of feminism. In that discussion, we addressed unrestrained female hypergamy, which is one of the many consequences of female sexual liberation brought about by feminism, otherwise known as a subset of anti-white ideology. Days after that discussion, Brittany and Nicole Pettibone produced a video titled, "Why is Dating Becoming So Difficult?" Why indeed, ladies? While they made some sagacious points in their efforts to answer that question, for example, they mentioned the negative stereotype associated with those seeking traditional dating practices, the grotesqueries of modern hookup culture, the isolating effects of social media, the elusiveness and fugacious nature of places to find good people. They missed the gluttonous 10,000-pound hypergamistic elephant in the room.
So first of all, I think to get to the point of this video, why dating is so hard, we have to look at what dating is in the traditional sense. And that, of course, is to find a spouse. The end goal is marriage. So I think that the hookup culture has resulted in resistance towards commitment, this trade-up culture where you're constantly looking for a better person, or just a low value placed on sex. And I think this is why...
It may seem that Nicole came close to addressing unrestrained female hypergamy when she mentioned trade-up culture. But no, she was identifying the problems that 80 or so % of women have with the narrow band of 10 to 20% of men on which women fixate. Of course, this 10 to 20% of men are resistant to commitment, because throughout the week, women are looking at them with faces that beam with invitation. Of course, these men are apt to trade up or just trade in for something new. With that many options, they cannot resist. And so it goes with a low value on sex. When legs spread like the petals in a field of daisies at dawn, they simply cannot resist.
The reason I wanted to make this video is because I've gotten so many emails from people in the past, from girls and guys, saying, where do you go to meet nice people? Where do you... And the truth is, I'm sitting there with a blank stare, like, I have no idea. I really have no idea, because the honest truth is, and it's awful, but you really can go nowhere to meet the right person.
Now that is what you call a blind spot. Most women, from average looking to beautiful, such as these two lovely ladies, attract the attention of men everywhere they go. Church, school, activities with friends, the mall, the park, the museum, the grocery store, the highway, everywhere. It's not a question of attracting attention. It is the narrow focus on the desired source of the attention.
It can be very difficult to find someone if you're approaching from dating in the traditional sense of the word. And to be honest, I think it's difficult for the vast majority of people who think this way. It was so difficult for me. It's so difficult for Nicole.
There is no use in having a traditional mindset if you permit unrestrained female hypergamy to influence your decision-making. Naturally, it's going to appear so difficult to find a good man when you focus on a narrow spectrum of men. A spectrum that also happens to have the most options and opportunity with women.
We have one really amazing friend in the US, and she is very competent. She has a really good job. She's very pretty. She's very kind. She's a very good homemaker, but she just cannot find anyone. It's been impossible, and there's this sadness growing in her that she'll never find anybody.
This description is the quintessence of frustrated female hypergamy. High sexual market value, and there just aren't any men out there. There is a growing sadness in the hearts of such women that they will never find anybody. Pfft, spare me. Those like her will find a man once they hit the wall and their sexual market value plummets like a fat girl on a frayed bungee cord. Once such women hit the wall, they start to panic. Suddenly, the 80 or 90% of men they snobbishly ignored enters their field of vision. But these are not the kinds of relationships that are conducive to strong, healthy families. Though they won't admit it, most women after having dated and been with more than a few of the men they wanted, feel that they are deigning to take the men they ignored. Such women are also misandristic to one degree or another as a result of their mistreatment by this small percentage of men they wanted and dated, the men with all the options and opportunities when it comes to women. And these men, the ones finally receiving some attention, are not happy. Sure, on the surface, they are delighted to finally have companionship, but they know they're getting mentally and physically damaged goods. They know they're getting a woman who deigns to be with them, and they know they have had to wait 10 or 15 years, her best years, the best years of her health, her physical beauty, her desire for sex. They know they have had to wait and waste their lives gaming and other such trivialities as she gave those good years and her best to that narrow spectrum of men. Or, as is the case with very few, wasted those years in a high tower as she waited for Mr. Perfectly Pretty to scale the walls.
One other aspect that I want to point out is that there's so much emphasis in our culture, especially in the West, where romance is sort of glamorized. Everything is like a chick flick and everything's perfect. If people think, oh, I don't find my Prince Charming, like right away, then they just move on and they're looking for something that doesn't exist.
This is probably true of Nicole, but if women actually lived by such sentiments rather than merely articulate them, the vast sweeping majority would have no problem finding a great guy. He will look something like this, rather than something like this, or average looking, but bolstered by wealth, power, or popularity. And that, my wayward sisters, is reality.
Let's just not be unrealistic. Like, he has to come in on a golden horse.
Yeah, and I think,
take me away to his castle.
Both Nicole and Brittany have mentioned Prince Charming and riding in on a golden horse to take a woman away to his castle. We also hear about the man riding in on a white horse or in a chariot. When used generally, these are metaphors for the men with the prettiest faces, though it might not be the case here. Typically, when a woman says that she shouldn't wait for Prince Charming, she is attempting to convince herself to give up the narrow focus on the small spectrum of men on which she has been fixated for the good years of her life.
As far as traditional dating, which is what the point of this video was, we think that that's why it's becoming so difficult, because traditional dating has lost the sense of what it actually is and been replaced by a kind of hookup culture or a totally different mentality.
It has been replaced by a different mentality, a hypergamistic mentality that was released double entendristically from Pandora's box. Some advice for my sisters: ignore the long eyelashed boys. There is a much higher percentage of good guys in the 80 to 90% you currently ignore. And don't give your bodies away. The anti-whites lied when they told you that having sex like a man was empowering. Your lasciviousness, your sexual promiscuity has made you vapid and effete. And with it, you have made yourself one of many concubines in the harems at the feet of your fixation.